The distress signal had traveled for 3 weeks through the dark spaces between stars before it reached Earth. It was weak, broken into pieces by enemy jamming, and by the time the communication officers managed to put it back together, most people had already assumed the Rathy were dead. Admiral Yuki Tanaka sat alone in her quarters aboard the carrier, enduring hope when the message finally played. The voice belonged to an old female, speaking slowly, as if she knew these might be her last words. To anyone who remembers us, the recording began. This is Elder Soren of Rylith Prime. The Dominion Collective has taken our outer colonies. Our fleet is destroyed. Our people are being gathered like animals for slaughter. We do not ask for rescue. We know the galaxy has forgotten us. We only wish to say goodbye and to send our final hopes to the small blue world we helped so long ago. We hope humanity has grown strong. We hope they have found happiness among the stars. We regret nothing. The message ended there. Static filled the silence. Tanaka closed her eyes and let the weight of history press down on her shoulders. 50 years ago, before she was born, a plague had swept across Earth. It killed billions. Nations collapsed. The survivors burned bodies in piles so large they could be seen from orbit. Humanity sent desperate calls for help to every species they had contacted, but no one answered. The galactic community declared Earth a quarantine zone. They wrote humanity off as another failed species, soon to be forgotten. But the Rathy came anyway at a small convoy of merchant ships, acting against their own government's orders, broke through the quarantine. They brought medicine, doctors, and hope. The cure they delivered saved what remained of the human race. The Rathy doctors stayed for years, teaching humans how to rebuild, sharing technology and knowledge freely. Many of those doctors died from Earth's diseases because their bodies could not handle the pathogens that humans had grown resistant to over thousands of years. The Rathy government was punished severely for this act of kindness. Other species imposed sanctions. Their economy collapsed. Their military weakened. Over the decades, they faded from galactic importance, becoming a small and quiet people on the edges of known space. Most species forgot they existed, but humanity never forgot that Tanaka's grandmother had been a child during the plague. She had watched her parents die in the same week. She had been saved by a Rathy doctor named Soren, a young female then, who had held her hand and promised that everything would be all right. That same Soren was now ancient and dying, and her people were being exterminated while the galaxy did nothing. The Admiral requested an emergency meeting with Earth Command within the hour. The council chamber was full of worried faces when Tanaka presented her case. She showed them the message. She showed them intelligence reports about the Dominion Collective's invasion. She showed them the projected timeline. Rylith Prime would fall within 2 months. The Dominion controls 40 star systems, said Defense Minister Okafor, his voice heavy with concern. We have been building our strength in secret for decades, but we are not ready for a war of this scale. I understand the risks, Tanaka replied. Do you? Because if we move now and we fail, humanity loses everything. Everything we have built since the plague. Our fleet, our colonies, our future. And if we do nothing. The room fell silent. They saved us, Tanaka continued, her voice steady. When we were nothing. When we had nothing to offer them. They defied their own people to help strangers dying on a poisoned world. They asked for nothing in return. They lost everything because of their kindness. And now they are facing extinction while we sit here talking about acceptable risks. Ambassador Lyra Okonkwo spoke next. The Galactic Council will not support this. Many species fear humanity's growing power. If we act aggressively, we give them an excuse to unite against us. Then we act without official support, Tanaka said. Give me the ships that are supposedly decommissioned. Give me the weapons that officially do not exist. If I fail, Earth can deny any involvement. If I succeed, we show the galaxy what humanity truly is. The council members exchanged looks. Some were afraid. Some were uncertain. But in the eyes of others, Tanaka saw something else. She saw the same fire that had kept humanity alive through the darkest years. The stubborn refusal to abandon those who had shown them kindness. Defense Minister Okafor sighed deeply. You understand that if you fail, we cannot rescue you. You will be alone out there. The Rathy were alone when they came for us. The vote was close, but it passed. As Tanaka left the chamber, Ambassador Okonkwo caught her arm. I cannot give you ships or soldiers, she said quietly. But I can make sure no one interferes. I will work the council. I will buy you time. Tanaka nodded her thanks. That night, encrypted orders went out to hidden shipyards and secret military bases across human space. Ships that had been officially destroyed began powering up their engines. Soldiers who had been training for years finally learned what they had been preparing for. Somewhere in the cold depths of space, the Rathy waited for death. They did not know that humanity was coming. Beyond the orbit of Neptune, hidden in the shadow of a frozen moon, the fleet came together in silence. Ships arrived one by one through the darkness, running without lights, without active sensors, like ghosts gathering for war. These were vessels that had been reported destroyed in training accidents, crews that had been listed as transferred to quiet postings, weapons that existed only in classified files that even most generals had never seen. Danny Webb stood on the observation deck of the carrier Relentless and watched another destroyer emerge from the darkness. He was 24 years old, a pilot from New Brisbane, and until 3 days ago he had believed he was simply part of a special training program. Now he knew the truth. He was part of humanity's hidden fist, built in secret over decades for a war that everyone hoped would never come. "Impressive, is it not?" said a voice behind him. Webb turned to find Commander Rosa Mendez, the leader of his fighter squadron, standing nearby. She was a small woman with gray in her hair and scars on her hands from 20 years of combat. Her eyes never stopped moving, always watching, always calculating. "I did not know we had this many ships," Webb admitted. Nobody did. That was the point. Mendez walked to stand beside him at the window. "Do you know why we are doing this?" "The real reason. The Rathy helped us during the plague. We owe them. That is the simple answer. Let me tell you the complicated one." Mendez pulled out a small photograph from her pocket. It showed a strange figure, thin and pale with large dark eyes, holding hands with a human child. "This is my grandmother. The other one is the Rathy doctor who saved her life. His name was Physician Torath. He stayed on Earth for 6 years after the plague, teaching our doctors, helping rebuild hospitals, working himself to exhaustion every single day. What happened to him? He died. Earth's bacteria killed him slowly over those 6 years. He knew it was happening. He stayed anyway." Mendez put the photograph away. "The Rathy who came to save us knew they might die. They came anyway. They did not ask what we could give them. They did not calculate whether we were worth the risk. They simply saw people suffering and decided to help." Webb was silent for a long moment. "And now we do the same for them. Now we do the same for them." Across the fleet, similar conversations were happening. Veterans telling younger soldiers why this mission mattered, showing photographs, sharing stories. The debt humanity owed was not just political or strategic. It was personal. Almost every human alive could trace their survival back to the Rathy intervention. Without them, there would be no humanity among the stars. There would be no humanity at all. Admiral Tanaka addressed the assembled fleet from the bridge of the Enduring Hope. Her image appeared on screens across every ship, her voice carrying through corridors and barracks and engine rooms. "You all know why we are here. 50 years ago, the Rathy saved our species from extinction. They paid a terrible price for that kindness. Now they face destruction, and the galaxy watches in silence. The Galactic Council calls this an internal matter. They say the Rathy are not worth the risk of angering the Dominion Collective. They are wrong." She paused, letting her words settle. "The Dominion believes they can conquer anyone weaker than themselves. They believe kindness is weakness. They believe that no one will fight for a dying species with nothing to offer. Today we prove them wrong. Today we show the galaxy that humanity remembers its friends, that we protect those who protected us, that our word means something." On the Relentless, Webb felt something shift in his chest. Pride, purpose, the understanding that he was part of something larger than himself. "We will face superior numbers," Tanaka continued. "We will take losses. Some of us will not return home. But we will show the Dominion what it means to threaten those humanity calls friend. And when this is over, when the galaxy sees what we have done, every species will understand a simple truth. Help humanity in our darkest hour, and we will move heaven and earth to repay that debt. Threaten our friends, and we will make you regret it for generations." The fleet began its final preparations. Engineers ran last checks on weapons. Pilots reviewed flight patterns. Medics prepared for casualties they hoped would not come. Ambassador Okonkwo, still on Earth, worked through the night at the Galactic Council. She could not ask for help. She could not even mention what was happening. But she could delay. She could confuse. She could ensure that by the time anyone understood what humanity was doing, it would be too late to stop them. In the medical bay of the Enduring Hope, Tanaka visited the ship's small memorial. Photographs lined the walls. Rathy doctors who had died saving humans. Humans who had died in the decades since, building the fleet that would now repay that sacrifice. She touched one photograph gently. A young female Rathy with kind eyes. "We are coming, Soren," she whispered. "Hold on just a little longer." The fleet jumped to hyperspace, leaving the cold moon behind. The war to repay a 50-year-old debt had begun. The outer colonies of Rathy space had once been beautiful places, green worlds with gentle seasons, orbital stations filled with art and music and the quiet business of peaceful trade. Elder Soren remembered visiting them as a young female, marveling at how her people had spread across the stars without losing their kindness. Now there was only silence and debris. Admiral Tanaka's fleet dropped out of hyperspace at the edge of Rathy territory and found a graveyard waiting for them. Destroyed stations drifted in pieces. The burned hulls of civilian transports tumbled slowly through the void. On the surfaces of once living worlds, cities had been reduced to black scars visible from orbit. Dominion standard tactics, Commander Hendricks reported from the tactical station. Strip the outer territories of resources and population. Push survivors toward the homeworld. Make an example. How many? Tanaka asked quietly. Based on the destruction patterns, at least 3 million Rathy in this sector alone, either dead or captured. The bridge crew absorbed this in grim silence. They had known the Dominion was brutal, but seeing the evidence firsthand made it real in a way that intelligence reports never could. "Contact," called out the sensor officer. "Dominion patrol. 6 vessels. Cruiserweight. They have seen us." Tanaka straightened in her command chair. "Battle stations. All ships prepare to engage." The Dominion patrol moved to intercept with the confidence of predators who had never met anything they could not kill. Their ships were sleek and angular, designed to intimidate as much as destroy. Their commander broadcast on an open channel, his translated voice dripping with contempt. "Unknown vessels, you have entered Dominion operational space. Identify yourselves and prepare to be boarded. Resistance will result in immediate destruction." Tanaka smiled coldly. "This is Admiral Yuki Tanaka of the United Earth Defense Fleet. We are here for the Rathy. Stand aside or be removed." There was a long pause. The Dominion commander had clearly never heard of Earth or its fleet. His confusion was almost audible. "Earth, you are the primitives from the quarantine zone. You dare threaten the Dominion collective?" "We dare." The Dominion ships opened fire. What followed was a lesson the Dominion would never forget. Human ships did not fight like other species. They did not maintain careful distances and exchange precise fire. They charged directly into close range where their heavier armor and faster reflexes gave them the advantage. They took hits that should have forced them to withdraw and kept fighting. They covered damaged allies instead of abandoning them to save themselves. Danny Webb flew in the chaos with his squadron, weaving between massive ships, targeting weak points that the larger vessels could not protect. His wingman took a hit and began trailing atmosphere. Standard Doctrine said to leave her and continue the mission. Webb ignored Doctrine, swooping back to provide cover while she limped toward the carrier. "Webb, what are you doing?" Mendez demanded over the radio. "Not leaving her behind. Commander, that is not tactically sound." "I do not care." 2 of the Dominion cruisers tried to focus fire on the damaged human fighter. The carrier Relentless moved to intercept, taking hits that cracked her forward armor, refusing to let them reach Webb and his wingman. Within 20 minutes, 4 Dominion cruisers were destroyed. The remaining 2 fled at maximum speed, their confidence shattered. The human fleet had taken damage but lost no ships. Overlord Kren received the report in his command center above Rylith Prime. He read it 3 times, certain there was some error. His patrol had been destroyed by primitives. Primitives who should not have had ships capable of leaving their own solar system for another century at least. "Find out everything about these humans," he ordered his intelligence staff. "Everything. I want to know how they built this fleet. I want to know why they are here." and I want to know how to destroy them. On Rylith Prime's surface, rumors began spreading through the refugee camps. Strange ships had appeared in the outer system. Ships that fought the Dominion and won. Some said they were mercenaries hired by distant allies. Others said they were ghosts, the spirits of all the species the Dominion had destroyed come for revenge. Elder Soren heard the rumors in her small shelter. She was too old and too tired to believe in miracles anymore. The Dominion would crush whoever these strangers were, just as they crushed everyone else. But late at night, when sleep would not come, she allowed herself to wonder. 50 years ago, she had held the hand of a frightened human child and promised that everything would be all right. She had watched that child grow into a woman who led the reconstruction of her shattered nation. She had exchanged letters with her for decades until the Dominion invasion cut all communication. Could it be possible? Could the small and frightened species she had helped save have grown strong enough to challenge the Dominion? Could they have remembered an old debt when the rest of the galaxy had forgotten the Rathy even existed? Soren closed her eyes and, for the first time in months, allowed herself to hope. Overlord Kren had conquered 11 species in his career. He had broken fleets that outnumbered his own. He had crushed rebellions with such thoroughness that the survivors begged for the privilege of serving him. He had never lost a campaign, and he did not intend to start now. The humans had surprised him once. They would not surprise him again that he pulled ships from 3 other operations, gathering an armada in the Vaughn Nebula. Intelligence reports told him the human fleet was damaged from their initial engagement. They were far from home, without supply lines, fighting for a species that could offer them nothing in return. By any reasonable calculation, they should withdraw before his overwhelming force arrived. But the humans did not withdraw. They came to meet him. Admiral Tanaka knew the numbers. Her fleet was outnumbered 5-1. Her ships were battered. Her crews were exhausted. Conventional wisdom said she should fall back, regroup, find a way to fight another day. But every day she delayed was another day the Rathy suffered under Dominion occupation. Every hour of caution meant more innocents dying. All ships, this is the Admiral. Her voice carried across the fleet as they approached the nebula. We cannot win this battle through superior firepower. We cannot win it through clever tactics. We can only win it by being willing to sacrifice more than they are. The Dominion fights for conquest. We fight for something they cannot understand. We fight because we owe a debt that cannot be measured in ships or soldiers. Today we show them what that means. The Battle of the Vaughn Nebula began at sunrise by Earth Standard Time, though there was no sun in that place. Only the cold glow of distant stars and the red light of the nebula itself. Danny Webb flew into the heart of the chaos with his squadron. Their mission was simple in description and almost impossible in execution. The Dominion command ship, a massive vessel called the Crushing Tide, was protected by layered shields that the human fleet could not penetrate from long range. Someone had to get close enough to destroy the shield generators. Someone had to fly through the entire Dominion formation, survive concentrated fire from dozens of ships, and hit a target the size of a small building. Commander Mendez led the attack personally. Stay tight. Trust your wingmen. Do not stop moving. They dove into the enemy fleet like arrows fired into a storm. Dominion point defense fire filled the space around them with death. Webb watched 2 pilots from his training class disappear in silent explosions within the first 30 seconds. He kept flying. There was no time for grief. There was only the mission. Mendez took a hit that sheared off half her fighter's wing. She kept flying. Another pilot reported total engine failure and began a controlled drift into a Dominion destroyer, his last act a ramming attack that crippled the enemy vessel. Webb took fragments from a near miss that tore through his cockpit, shredding his left arm and cracking his helmet. Webb, you are hit. Fall back. Mendez's voice crackled through damaged speakers. Negative, Commander. I can still fly. That is an order. Respectfully, Commander, I am not leaving until this is done. The shield generators loomed ahead. Massive structures on the Crushing Tide's hull, protected by layers of armor and defensive weapons. Webb's targeting computer was dead. His left arm was useless. He flew on instinct, adjusting his approach by feel, and fired everything he had left. The generators exploded. For a heartbeat, the Crushing Tide hung exposed. Then the human fleet, battered and bloodied but still fighting, concentrated their fire on Kren's command ship. Missile after missile struck home. The massive vessel began to break apart. Overlord Kryn survived by reaching an escape pod seconds before his bridge was destroyed. He watched from the darkness of space as his armada fell into chaos. Without central command, without their flagship, his captains began retreating. Some tried to continue fighting and were destroyed by human ships that seemed to grow more fierce with every wound they took. The battle was over in hours. The human fleet had lost nearly half its ships. 3 carriers, 8 destroyers, thousands of soldiers and pilots who would never see home again. Danny Webb was pulled from the wreckage of his fighter more dead than alive. His left arm gone below the elbow, his body broken but somehow still breathing. Admiral Tanaka stood on her damaged bridge and recorded a message that would be broadcast across all frequencies, to every species with the technology to receive it. We are humanity. We remember those who helped us. We repay our debts. Any species that has shown us kindness in our darkest hours, know that we will never forget. Any species that threatens our friends, know that we will never forgive. The Dominion has learned this lesson today. We hope others are wise enough to learn it without repeating their mistake. Across the galaxy, communication stations picked up the message. Species that had never heard of humanity began asking questions. Species that had dismissed them as irrelevant primitives began paying very close attention. The game had changed. Everyone could feel it. The message spread faster than any signal had traveled before. Within hours, Admiral Tanaka's words had reached communication stations across 1,000 worlds. Within days, the Battle of the Vaughn Nebula was being discussed in council chambers and trading posts and military academies from one end of the galaxy to the other. Most species had forgotten humanity existed. The plague, the quarantine, the slow decades of recovery had all happened outside their attention. Earth was a minor world on the edge of nowhere, populated by short-lived primitives who bred too fast and died too easily. They were a footnote in galactic history, soon to be forgotten entirely. Now that footnote had crippled the Dominion Collective's invasion fleet and changed every calculation about power and politics in known space. Ambassador Lyra Okonkwo watched the reactions from her position at the Galactic Council headquarters. Some species were terrified. They called for immediate sanctions against Earth, demanding that humanity be contained before they grew any stronger. Others were curious, sending quiet messages through back channels asking for meetings and discussions. A few, mostly smaller species who had suffered under larger powers, looked at the news feeds with something like hope. "You have created quite the situation," said the Mindari ambassador, a small being with 2 mini eyes and a voice like rustling leaves. "The Dominion is demanding we condemn Earth as aggressors. Half the council wants to agree with them. And the other half?" Okonkwo asked. "The other half is remembering old grudges and old fears. The Dominion has been growing stronger for centuries. Many species have lost territory to them, lost people, lost pride. Now someone has proven they can bleed." The Mindari ambassador's many eyes blinked in sequence. "You have given the galaxy something dangerous, Ambassador. You have given them an example." On Rylith Prime, the news arrived like sunlight breaking through storm clouds. The Dominion occupation forces tried to suppress it, but rumors spread anyway. Strange ships from a forgotten world had defeated the Overlord. Help was coming. Hope was returning. Elder Soren was brought before a communication screen by Rathy resistance fighters who had managed to establish a hidden link with the human fleet. When Admiral Tanaka's face appeared, Soren felt her heart skip beats she could not afford to lose. "Elder Soren," Tanaka said, her voice respectful, almost reverent. "I am Admiral Yuki Tanaka of Earth. I believe you knew my grandmother." "Little Yuki," Soren whispered, using the name from letters exchanged decades ago. "You are her granddaughter?" "I am. She told me stories about you my whole life. About how you held her hand during the worst days. About how you promised everything would be all right. She never forgot. We never expected." Soren's voice broke. "We never imagined you would come. You owe us nothing. What we did because it was right. Not for payment." "I know." Tanaka's expression was fierce and gentle at the same time. "That is exactly why we came. You taught us that kindness should not require payment. But you also taught us that it should never be forgotten. Hold on a little longer, Elder. We are coming for you." The connection ended. Soren sat in silence for a long time, tears running down her weathered face. Around her, younger Rathy watched with wide eyes. They had grown up in a galaxy that seemed cold and cruel, where strength was the only currency that mattered. Now they were learning that some species remembered older values. Across the darkness of space, Overlord Kryn was rebuilding his forces. He had escaped the battle with his life and his rage. His superiors in the Dominion High Command were not pleased. They had given him the Rathy campaign as a simple matter, a chance to add another conquered species to their empire without risk. Instead, he had lost a third of his fleet to primitives. "I want every ship we can spare," Kryn told his staff. "Pull them from garrison duty. Cancel leave. Strip defenses from the border worlds if necessary. I will crush these humans and their Rathy pets. I will make such an example that no one will ever dare challenge the Dominion again." His intelligence officers had finally assembled a complete report on humanity. What they found was disturbing. The humans came from a death world, a planet so hostile that most galactic species could not survive its environment without extensive protection. They had evolved through constant struggle, developing resilience and adaptability that defied normal biological limits. And they had hidden their true military capability for decades, building in secret while the galaxy ignored them. "They are dangerous," his chief advisor warned. "Perhaps more dangerous than we assumed. A withdrawal might be wise." "Withdrawal?" Kryn's voice was deadly quiet. "You suggest the Dominion collective retreat from primitives and their dying friends?" "No. We finish this. We destroy the humans. We exterminate the Rathy. And we show the galaxy that challenging the Dominion means extinction." His armada gathered once more, larger than before. Every ship Kryn could beg, borrow, or threaten was being called to Rylith Prime. This time there would be no mistakes. This time the humans would learn what it truly meant to stand against the Dominion. But the galaxy was watching, and humanity was not done yet. The final battle began with silence. No declarations of war, no dramatic speeches, just the cold mathematics of destruction as Overlord Kryn's rebuilt armada dropped out of hyperspace above Rylith Prime. His force was massive, 3 times larger than the fleet he had lost at the Vaughn Nebula. Enough firepower to crack continents. Enough ships to darken the sky. Admiral Tanaka's battered fleet moved to intercept. They had managed to repair some of the damage from the previous battle, but they were still outnumbered beyond any reasonable hope of victory. The Rathy had no warships left to contribute. The galaxy had sent no reinforcements. They were alone against the full might of the Dominion collective. Danny Webb sat in the cockpit of a borrowed fighter, his new prosthetic arm still unfamiliar against the controls. The doctors had wanted him to rest. He had refused. If this was humanity's last stand, he would be part of it. "All ships, hold position," Tanaka ordered. Her voice was calm, almost peaceful. "Do not engage until my command." Kryn watched the human formation with contempt. They were not even attempting to maneuver. They simply hung in space between his fleet and the planet, a pathetic obstacle waiting to be swept aside. "Destroy them," he commanded, but before his ships could fire, sensors began screaming alerts. New contacts, dozens of them, emerging from hyperspace all around the battlefield. They were not warships. A Tyrellian medical frigate, a Vorthan trading convoy, a Mindari research vessel, a Kalani pilgrim transport. Ships from a dozen different species, none of them armed, none of them capable of combat. They positioned themselves in a scattered line between the Dominion fleet and the humans. "What is this?" Kryn demanded. The answer came through an open broadcast. A Tyrellian captain spoke first. 15 years ago, a human explorer gave us fuel when our ship was stranded. We were strangers to her. She helped us anyway. Today we stand with humanity." A Vorthan merchant spoke next. 20 years ago, an Earth patrol rescued our convoy from pirates. They asked nothing in return. Today we stand with humanity. Voice after voice, species after species. Small kindnesses given and received across decades. A research database shared during a crisis. Medical supplies donated after a disaster. A single human pilot who stopped to help a damaged ship instead of continuing her mission. None of these actions had seemed significant at the time. None of them had been recorded in official histories or celebrated in political speeches, but they had been remembered. Kryn stared at the screen with something close to shock. His tactical officers were running calculations. If he opened fire now, he would destroy not just humans, but civilians from a dozen neutral species. The political consequences would be catastrophic. Every species represented in that scattered defensive line would demand retribution. The Dominion's carefully maintained network of treaties and alliances would collapse. Overlord, his advisor said carefully, if we fire on neutral vessels, we unite the galaxy against us. I can see that. Kren's voice was hollow. Perhaps a strategic withdrawal would be wise. The Rathy are not worth this cost. For a long moment, Kren said nothing. He had built his entire career on conquest and intimidation. He had never retreated from any enemy. But he had never faced an enemy like this before. Not a fleet or an army, but an idea. The idea that kindness could be a weapon. That debts of compassion could echo across decades and light years. The Dominion fleet withdrew. Months later, Rylith Prime was being rebuilt. Human engineers worked alongside Rathy survivors, constructing new homes on the ashes of the old. Medical ships from a dozen species brought supplies and volunteers. The galaxy had not suddenly become kind, but something had shifted. Something had changed. Danny Webb, his arms still adapting to its new form, helped train young Rathy pilots on simulators donated by the Mindari. He had thought about going home, but this felt more important. This felt like where he was supposed to be. Elder Soren sat in a garden that had been named in her honor, watching children of both species play together. A young human girl approached her, curious and unafraid. Why did your people come so far to help us? The girl asked. Soren smiled, remembering a frightened human child she had held in her arms 50 years ago. Remembering a promise she had made in the darkest hours. Because long ago, she said, when your people were strangers to us, we decided they were worth saving. And they never forgot. Will you always be friends now? I hope so, little one. Soren looked up at the sky, where human and Rathy ships patrolled together. The galaxy is watching us. It is learning that debts of kindness are the only debts that grow larger when repaid. Perhaps one day, everyone will understand what your people have shown us today. The girl sat beside her, and together they watched the ships move across the stars, guardians of a friendship that had crossed 50 years and countless light years to prove that some things in the universe were stronger than empires, stronger than fear, stronger than the cold mathematics of power. Kindness remembered. Kindness returned. The galaxy would never be the same.